Okay, a very warm welcome then. We are kicking off the Food and Fibre in Collaboration session, and this session is themed Circular Economies. So in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, we are recording this session. I've just pressed record. And if you are joining us, if you could please, as much as possible, use your video so that we can see your faces. And also, when we are not speaking, if you can ensure that your microphone is on mute. Just like the previous workshop that we just did on agri-tourism, we'll be using a number of our Zoom techniques. And the first part will be a listening part where I'll be sharing a bit of a background of what we discussed last time at the kick-off workshop on the 6th of October. And we will also be looking at we'll be using the annotation tools where each of you will have a chance to effectively use a virtual whiteboard where we will be sharing our thoughts on where we see the key challenges, the driving forces and the why behind those key challenges, and then also where are the collaboration opportunities when it comes to circularity across Central Queensland. And then finally, we'll be going into breakout sessions where in small groups, we will have a chance to discuss those opportunities and try and unpack why we've also got the challenges. And so then when we come back into a larger forum, I will be asking a spokesperson from each of those breakout rooms to speak on behalf of their group and share back ideas for a brighter future when it comes to circularity. So this is all part of getting the specifics right so that when we meet again for a larger workshops in January, we are much more pointy in co-designing together what some solutions are going to be. So I'm just going to have a look at all participants to see if everyone's on board and just to ensure that we've got, if anybody's got any questions at this point, here is an opportunity. And if you do have a question, the way that we have been doing it today is to please just raise your virtual hand. And I'm just looking through the participants there. I don't have any hands raised. So without further ado, I will kick off. And the first part, I'm going to just do that little bit of grounding about what we discussed last time at the kickoff workshop, just so that we can refocus where we are. So when we talked about circular economies, one of the key things that we have learned from discussing this topic across a number of stakeholders and also from reading across the literature is that there is an opportunity for sort of education and improving, what the understanding of circular economies exactly is. So everyone sort of knows a little bit about it. They're sort of thinking, some people obviously know a huge amount about it, but thinking beyond sort of waste and how do we reduce and eliminate waste, that kind of, it came across that there is a great opportunity to be able to improve the education and particularly around things like business models, having to improve our knowledge of, well, what are all the different business models, like sharing platforms as an example, that go hand in hand with circularity. There was certainly some waste around infrastructure, waste infrastructure that is, and that we could be improving that because it's difficult to have circularity without the right infrastructure there. And part of that infrastructure also came to data infrastructure too. So I've got a point there about the lack of transparency. So it's hard to have circularity if you can't see what all the resources are that are moving parts. There was discussions raised around organic matter, that we're still having too much going into landfill, and I think this was coming more sort of out of towns in particular, and that the whole concept of circular economies actually requires an enormous amount of collaboration, and it's complex collaboration because you're changing whole systems from being linear to circular. And so if that's the case, then well, who leads it? And how do we get the right mindset and headspace for doing that? Because it's not a little shift, it's potentially quite big radical shifts. So these are just some of the pain points and challenges that we heard. We've heard a lot more, but I just wanted to share a few so that it could get people thinking, because when we have our workshops where I'm going to be asking each of you to be sharing back, you'll be asked to write down what you think are the challenges, and also to talk about them, and some of you will be sharing back on behalf of your group. So the reason why I'm sharing some of these now is just as a starting point to get you thinking. So when we think about collaboration opportunities across Central Queensland, when it comes to circularity, these are some of the things that have already been raised by some of the stakeholders. So things such as improving our data so that we can characterize the data more. So understanding, what are the wastes, the byproducts, what's the infrastructure, and how can we track it so that if we're going to have circular systems, we need to be able to see it. Asset sharing. This is one of the business models of circular economies, is that shift from individuals owning assets to assets being sort of more centrally or collaboratively shared, so that we don't have so much capital tied up, financial capital tied up, that assets can be, I guess, more communal. So that was one of the opportunities. An example here was like processing machinery could be a example. Collective ownership, therefore, links down to that. But collective ownership could also be not just of assets, it could be of digital platforms, for instance, where we would be tracking waste or resources or byproducts. Looking more deeply into renewable energy sources, bioenergy, biotech, and just sort of different innovations that can come out of fibre, but also the byproducts as well. So there are a few examples that have been started to be talked about, and I'm sure there's many, many more. And of course, the Internet of Things, which is linking back to that data again, so that we can have a better understanding of where everything is if we're going to be tracking and keeping items in circularity, particularly those non-renewable resources. How do we keep them in circularity? And so that is just the starting point of some ideas, the collaborative opportunities, and also some of the pain points and challenges that we've heard so far. So this is certainly not an exhaustive list, and our task today will be to build upon that. So one of the things we did when we had the kickoff workshop is we did a short poll at the end to ask people, from what you'd heard about so far about circularity, and how significant and how important is this opportunity for us to collaborate across Central Queensland to build more circularity. And the results from that survey were that it was perceived as very, very important. The average was 7.59, and the mode, we actually had a lot of people there at the 9 out of 10. So it was a score out of 10, and 10 being absolutely very, very significant. We should be really focused on this. So for that reason, this theme has been elevated into something that we certainly would like to be putting some focus on, and it's an opportunity for us to collaborate across the regions. So the final part of me sharing before we get stuck into the workshop is we have, as a project management team, we've tried to distill this into what we're calling a proposed, which means it's not final, it's just a bit of a starting point, a bit of a problem statement, so that we can be very pointy when we start thinking about opportunities to solve. So one of the key things that, and I've already alluded to it, is the low understanding of what the concept of circular economies is, and the opportunities for industry that can come off that. So we're seeing this as a bit of an education gap, and if we can bring everyone onto that same level, are there opportunities for really improving circularity across Central Queensland? The lack of characterized data. So that's just understanding what the data is. It's one thing tracking things, but what exactly is all that data, and how accurate is it? That's been highlighted as one of the problems, because if you can't see the data and know what the problem is, then how do you keep it in circularity? So being able to track and trace. and the low awareness of the bioenergy generation. Now, there could be lots of spin-offs from this, so that was, you know, one of the examples there. And just our embedded linear systems. And it's not just Central Queensland, it's around the world. It's a global thing that we have been working across linear systems for a long time. So what that really means is that, particularly with our non-renewables, is that as we draw non-renewables and use them, and, you know, it's a simple example, you know, if it's you know, a piece, some plastic packaging as an example, you know, we produce it from virgin materials, we consume it, and then the plastic would go into landfill, and it's not kept in circularity. So a simple solution would be to, how do you keep that non-renewable plastic in circularity so that it's used over and over again? So a very simple example, and that can be, but that can be applied for absolutely anything that is a non-renewable. How do you keep it in circularity, so that we, and if it is renewable, how, you know, that's a way of keeping the system going. So it's all about having a sustainable system, as well as it's economic, as well as environmental. So doing a little bit of an explanation here of circular economies. So that's the overarching sort of background to that. So our task, so as a collective group here today, and we've got 24 people on the participation here. So our task, so the 24 of us, will be to hone in on those key challenges. And I'm going to be asking each of you, what do you see as an individual? What do you see as the key challenges that are the barriers, that what is stopping us from having, you know, accelerating our movement towards circularity? So that's the first part. And then underpinning that, why? You know, why is that so? What's driving that, those blockages? Why aren't we moving more quickly? And that may be positive things and negative things. You know, it's just sort of pulling some examples up there. And then the exciting part, and we want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about this, is, well, where are the opportunities? How can we work across our regions more collaboratively, and particularly find the opportunities that, if we work together, we can achieve so much more. We can create, you know, value from across this sort of a network of clusters across Central Queensland, that, you know, if we just work in silos and in isolation, we can't achieve as much. So what are the sort of more overarching collaborative opportunities that we can tap into? So I want you all to hold those three things in your mind, because they're the key outputs and the key tasks for today, those three things. So just as we did with the agri-tourism one, if you were in that workshop session, we are now going to use the annotation tool as our whiteboard. So in terms of the annotation tool, in case you had missed out, it is this little button here. It looks like a pen. And so the first thing we're going to do is, I'm going to ask you all to use that pen to annotate on the virtual whiteboard, which is going to be around the key challenges for circularity. So that's the first thing here. So if I can ask you all to start annotating, just put down your thoughts, and there's no right or wrong. You know, what is the challenge? You know, why? You've seen some ideas so far. And great, and you guys have got the hang of it already. So just in case you had missed out, you click on annotate, and then you can click on text, and next, and halfway along the bar is a spot called format, and there you can change the color. We've got a couple of people using blue. If you like to use a different color, there's, you know, pink, red, green, whatever you fancy. It's a way of being able to share. So we've got some great ideas coming up already of what are the challenges. Why are we finding it difficult to implement circular economies across Central Queensland, and for that matter, you know, why is it a challenge even, you know, across the world? And do we have any specific challenges that are unique to Central Queensland? Lots of great ideas are coming up. We've got here, there's diversity, very different regions, the distance, cost, the lack of knowledge of what circularity can do. We've heard that a lot, actually. Water security, engaging producers to be motivated to engage in circular economy processes. Excellent. Like the different colour. Quantifying the opportunity for growers, try and find that motivation. The cost of resources. Excellent, excellent. Well, we're going to just another 30 seconds and I will save this. So get your thoughts down. There's a low awareness of byproduct and residual uses, yes. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm just saving that as a PDF and I'm going to clear all these drawings and we're going to go now into what I always think is a little bit harder. It's the point where we start to think about, well, why are we having these challenges? What are the driving forces, particularly across Central Queensland? What's making circularity, you know, really, really hard? Well, the positives or negatives, it's the why. So we just talked about the problems, but what's driven those problems? Sort of just peeling back the onion and going a bit deeper. We've got culture, poorly informed decision making, the lack of understanding of exactly what the opportunities are of circularity, people not knowing what all the different business models are. You know, the whole sharing economy, you've got, you know, there's all businesses that can be surrounding the whole sort of like looking at, well, how do we look at our byproducts and how do we put them back into the system? The demand for recycled materials as one example as well. The fear of change. Great, we've got some really good thoughts coming through here. How to create a system that benefits all those involved. Defining value. And the lack of collaboration between support agencies that support the industries. And the global market competitiveness. Is there a thought that this is going to cost more? That we have a disjointed approach, doing it in pockets rather than doing it as a team. Great. Well, I'm just going to close this one off in 5 more seconds. So get your thoughts down now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I will save that as a PDF. And I will clear all those drawings. And then the last one to get our thoughts straight to is that the next one we're going to be looking at is, well, where are those collaboration opportunities across Central Queensland for circularity? And this could be business model opportunities. This could be, you know, something really specific. It might be, you know, like the bioenergy one, or it could be, you know, it could be broad. It could be specific. It could be addressing waste. It could be looking at how to bring renewables back. It could maybe, how do we design for disassembly? That's a business model. How do we turn a product into a service? It's another business model of circular economies. And think about the, one of the things about circularity too is that it does address the economics as well as you know, the environment. So just thinking, you know, sort of broadly. We've got some great ideas coming through. So business to business, finding innovation solutions on a case-by-case basis. We've got bringing people together across the region on circular economy has been done with other industry initiatives. So perhaps we can be learning rather than you know, duplicating what has worked in other industries, and can we learn from that? It's a great idea. Valuing byproducts as a resource for other operators. Can we think, you know, get some specific examples down here as well, like thinking about, you know, whoever put the byproduct one down, you know, can we think in a more granular way to think, well, what example could that be? You know, is there a byproduct from the cotton industry, for instance, or from grains, or from, you know, what are some of our organic matter byproducts? You know, what could we do with those? And also think about some of the non-renewables that we have that are not being circulated. Is there anything that we can do with those? Okay, just another 5 seconds before I close this whiteboard. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. I'm just saving that as a PDF, and I'm going to clear that now. Excellent. Well done, everyone. There was a lot of thoughts, and the reason why we do that too is that we've just gone through 2 parts. So firstly, I've shared with you, got us sort of thinking, grounding of what we talked about last time, and you've all had that chance now to reflect and get some thoughts down onto the virtual paper on our shared virtual white screen. And so now what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be breaking you all into some groups. And so we're going to have the chance to talk about this in a breakout discussion. So I'm going to make the groups about 4 to 5 people in each group. We've got 23 participants, so I'm not sure how the machine will do that. I do that automatically. So I'm not sure who you'll end up with, but the most important thing is when you go into this group is the first task that you've got to do is to appoint who is going to be the spokesperson for your group. And if that person can play a leading role in ensuring that your team talks about these 3 things that you're talking about, well, what are the key challenges? The driving forces, so this is the why, you know, what's causing these issues? And then really importantly, ensure that you have enough time at the end to talk about the collaborative opportunities across Central Queensland. And the big ask for you all is try and come back with some really specific granular examples of how these collaborative opportunities could be brought to life, so that we sort of transition from it being conceptually to being something specific. And you know, it's more just to bring an example so that people can really understand, that's what you mean. So that would be fantastic. So that's the task. And but before we go in, I'm just going to pause in case people have any questions at all. I'm just going to look at the participants list, and in fact I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all your faces. Fantastic. Oh, now first thing, as I start to look at all your faces, if you're comfortable, could you please put your video on, because it's much more fun when you go into a breakout room and you can see each other. So hi everyone. And when you go into your breakout room too, your mute button should automatically come off, but if it doesn't, obviously you're going to need to chat. So look out for that too. So are we clear on what the task is when you go into that breakout room? If you are, just give me a thumbs up. You can either physically do it or you can use your buttons. Yeah, okay. Yeah, got some thumbs up coming there. Excellent. Okay, well, I'm just a bit concerned because I've got a few faces haven't come up. So I'm hoping that these people are with us. Yep, here they come. Sometimes people leave it and left the room, so put them in a breakout room and then just, you know, me quiet. So, okay, I'm going to make the breakout rooms now, and I'm going to allocate 5 people. Here we go, recreate. Okay, so there's going to be, I'm going to do 4 breakout rooms, so they'll be slightly bigger, and I'm going to give you, you're going to have a bit of time. You're going to have 15 minutes in this chat, so you can really go through. So remember, the first thing is somebody needs to volunteer to be the spokesperson. So that's the first task, and then that spokesperson is going to help corral the team. So that would be fantastic. All right, well, good luck everyone. And you don't have to do anything. You will just go into the breakout room and then you'll automatically come back, and I'll be sending through some instructions as well as you go. So have fun. Hi, welcome back everybody. So you've come back into the forum, and you've all come back. Great to see your videos are on. I can see some smiling faces, which is awesome. And you've all come back on mute. So before we do anything, was that a good experience or a bad experience? You can either use your thumbs or an emoji. Got some thumbs up there. Great. I generally find people enjoy the breakouts, and getting to know people across the regions is a great thing, and sharing different ideas. Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is we had 4 groups. So if you are the spokesperson for your group, could you please either raise your virtual hand or your physical hand so that I can make a list of this. So I've got Shireen. Hi, Shireen.
Hello.
Great. So you are our number 1 spokesperson, and who else was a spokesperson? With Chris Welsh. Hi, Chris.
Howdy.
Great. Thank you for stepping up as well. Fantastic. Who's our 3rd spokesperson? We have Bob. Is that right there? Hi, Bob.
Oh, yes, I was nominated.
Thank you very much. And we should have 1 more spokesperson. Let me see. We got that. There should be 1 more group.
It's me, Jackie. I'm a spokesperson again.
Oh, there you are. Excellent, Michael. Thank you very much for nominating to do that. That's great. Okay, well, I think many of you were here before, but if not, I'll just share with you how we're going to run this. So I'm going to call on each of you, and we're pretty good for time. We've got half an hour, so we're at the same point as what we were last time. But there are only 4 groups, so we can talk for a little bit longer. And so we'll start with Shireen, then we'll go to Chris, then to Bob, and then Michael will be our anchor at the end. And basically your task is to share back what the team saw as the key challenges, what the driving forces are behind that. So we're trying to unpack it, get behind, peel back the onion layer to find out, well, why? And then what I always see as the exciting, sunny part is, well, where are the opportunities for collaborating across the region so that we can create better and accelerate our way towards circularity faster by working together. So that's the exciting part, and that's really when we meet again in January, that's going to be the real focus of how can we be co-designing a better future. So that's the task. And for all of those who are listening and they're not the spokesperson, you also have a job to do, which is to be an active listener and to share on the chat. Guarantee there'll always be points and thoughts that perhaps the spokesperson for your group has missed. So please ensure that we're capturing all of that by sharing that on the chat. And so that at the end of this, we're being able to wrap up what really is a co-designed and collective view from all of us who are participating today. So can I have a thumbs up if that's all clear? Awesome. So Shireen, handing over to you. I'm going to go on mute, so you've got the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, we had quite a good lengthy conversation about these, the key challenges first and foremost. I guess there was, some concern in understanding what is out there. Identify what local waste resources and how these resources can be repurposed. The logistics, the byproducts, and waste to energy. I guess sort of breaking down the different wastes, classifications, I suppose. Because as Lalisha also touched on, was that we're not just looking at agri waste, we're also looking at ag waste, we're also looking at other products such as oils and so forth. So how they can be integrated. There was, maybe gathering that information from a data source, and there was a discussion, what one person's waste may not necessarily be another person's, maybe their feedstocks. A harmonisation and commonality of what people have, what products they have out there. And then discussion on the driving force was, the market demand and the availability, the domestic green waste, quantity in the regions, and what is out there. Sorry, I did a bit of I did some written and also some on the computer. Need to talk to industry groups and inform of what circular economy is. That probably go back onto the key challenges, sorry. And then, leveraging existing efforts, what people are actually doing, policy engagement, transparency, for what's out there. And that's, with the collaborative approaches, what's happening in the different regions, gather that information to get some examples. And I think that was it, but if there was anything that I missed out, Alicia and Gary, if you jump in, that's fine.
I was talking with my mute on.
Yeah.
Well, let's open that up to the rest of your team. We have got a little bit more time for this one, so if anybody else in Shireen's team would like to speak, share anything as well.
I think, Jacqueline, just to support Shireen, again, it's about a circular economy, and there's a myriad of definitions about what a circular economy is, and the understanding of a circular economy. So, again, one person's product could be one person's waste could be another person's feedstock. So it's about understanding what a circular economy is and what the outcomes of a circular economy is. Is it economic? Is it environmental? Is it something else? But is it all of those things? So I think that's a key thing. What we found down in the region here is industry here practices circular economy and has done for a long time, and it's all driven by social and environmental considerations as well as economic. So what is the driver of what you're trying to achieve is critical in establishing an efficient circular economy market.
Great, thank you very much. So Gary, I think you're alluding to as well to be clear definitions and helping with the education of that so that people actually understand, because it is a relatively new term for many people. Is that what you were sort of saying as well there, Gary?
Oh, it's no doubt there's an education piece to it, but it's about defining what a circular economy is and what you're looking to the outcomes of the circular economy. A lot of people see a circular economy as as purely using a waste product to destroy or burn or create energy or something like that, whereas a waste product can be another value add product for somebody else, that can be another extractive industry for somebody else. And then you have your true circular economy. The sugar industry in the north has been practicing a circular economy for years, in terms of waste product coming out of the crushing season, going back into the ground and back onto properties to improve soil quality. So that's a great example.
Yeah, regenerative systems is also a part of circular economy, which you're alluding to there too. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shireen and Gary. Anybody else from your team, would they like to speak up as well? Also, if you do have any further comments, of course, use the chat and just reference circular economy and whether it's a challenge or an opportunity that you are referencing here. Fantastic. Well, thank you again to Shireen's team. And can I just have a thumbs up from that team that we have covered everything between Gary and Shireen, if you were in that team? Got a few thumbs up there. I've got one from Alicia. Awesome. Okay, so next we have Chris. So Chris, if you could share on behalf of your team.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Look, in no particular order, the challenges that we sort of looked at is the influence of changing technologies and how that can either be beneficial or hindrance to what people, how they can interact in this space. There's obviously, as technologies develop, it can be seen as an opportunity, but I think that with the sector that we're dealing with is that a lot of producers are traditional in their approach and struggle with the implementation of new technologies, and that's been since they were using horses rather than tractors. It's always been the way, and getting them over those hurdles from time to time is a key one. Engaging those stakeholders in the process, and articulating to them what the opportunities are in the circular economy. That the way that they've operated in the past, they're what they see as a waste product is someone else's gold, and just getting over their conceptions that that there's a lack of opportunity, I suppose, to do something with that byproduct. There's a lot of education needed in that space to actually assist those producers in how they can take that and make that into a resource that they can actually pass on to someone else at value. And finally, given the geographics of the area and the region that we're talking about, the actual logistics of getting enough of the secondary product into one place to turn it into a viable production site. Let's say we've got plenty of opportunities in isolated locations. It's how do we gather that together into a usable resource that getting that economy of scale happening where we can actually make a viable commercially. Some of the opportunities, and we got a little bit engaged in actual examples of opportunities of things that can happen in terms of further reuse of products, cottonseed and that, and chickpeas going to animal feed and that. And but it was an interesting point, I think, that might have been Lou made, or perhaps it was you, Cassie, talking about the further waste product from cottonseed, from cotton production that actually being used to power the actual ginneries themselves. And there's a good example here in Billow. We've got a piggery here that has its own on-site biofuel generating plant. So all of their waste from the pig pens and the from the feed that they don't use, and they also gather the green waste from the shops and restaurants around town, and that all goes into that biofuel generating plant, which is quite successful. They're self-sustaining. They could be off the grid if they chose to be. Some of the other things we talked about in that space was in the sugar, and what's happening around Mackay with the power and ethanol production off the back of sugarcane, and its value in that process. Brief discussion on a pilot project to make that more commercially viable. But just something that's occurred to me just while I was listening to Shireen speak in terms of opportunities for collaboration in this is the development of nodal sites, where co-location of a primary and then a secondary processing, using that as an opportunity to build more value into the process. So it's just something that occurred to me, and I'll throw it open to Tonya and Cassie and Lou as to whether or not they have any more to add in that space.
Thanks, Chris. So yes, let's open it up to the group. And Chris, I just also want to say thank you so much for getting granular, because it makes it really easier for people to understand the concepts, and it's awesome to have some lighthouses of examples like the one that you shared about with the piggery for others to be able to spark further ideas. So I really appreciate you and your team for going to that length. So opening up to Chris's team.
I'll just quickly go first. It's Cassie here, CHDC in Emerald. The biggest point that I got out of that with talking and speaking to our growers and producers here is definitely we have these great ideas, but getting enough involvement and enough people doing it to make it cost effective. Otherwise, our transport becomes our biggest burden. Although we do have CQ Inland Port, and a few others popping up in our area that will be able to help that fairly soon. But it's working with the groups, I'd say, like the cotton irrigators here as an association, to if someone comes up with an idea, to then make sure everyone knows of the idea and see if more people can get on board to make it more economical.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's definitely something that I've been hearing too, Cassie, with the stakeholder interviews, is how do you get to critical mass to make it viable. So I think that's building upon what you've just highlighted there. Awesome. Any further builds for Chris's group? All good. Okay, so thumbs up from the rest of that group that the bulk of it's covered. Yeah, and if not, there's always the chat, and ideas can come to you at any point. So just use that chat function. Certainly don't sit on an idea or thought or a reflection. So next person is Bob. Over to you, Bob.
Got to unmute. Listening actively there. I have to unmute. First of all, we've looked up at key challenges. One is probably the education or awakening the people and getting people on board to think about circular economy. And it's probably going more into producers looking at how they can value add to their products by moving into this area as well. So creating the product, the value add products that go on beyond that. And that was one of the first things we looked at. The next was many of the producers that are working today in our agribusinesses are so tied up in working in that agribusiness that they have very little opportunity to go out and collect information on this or pull together that information to how they can move into a circular economy. They're just so involved in their businesses, and one of the things is trying to move them away from working in the business to working on the business and being more strategic about it, how they're running their agribusinesses there. The next one that we sort of looked at there was the amount of information out there is enormous on the circular economies. So how do you distill this down into distinct groups that is capable of used by various types of producers that have products that could be added there. So that's another area there. So the understanding that's particularly of what is suited to your business and that. So understanding that bio efficiencies and everything else that can be gained. We talked about biosolids out of piggeries there, and using that to sustain the business by producing energy to put back into the business, but also who else is out there that can tap into that. So that once again, somebody else, one of the other groups looked at those nodal sites and that sort of thing. The other one is the risk appetite. Is a producer prepared to take on that risk? So we looked at these days now, families had a big business. They started to work down through that line of their business, but now there's families coming back into the business. Their sons and daughters are coming back in and running the business. So in that risk opportunity, how can you show these people how that they can sustain these other families that are coming back onto that business by value adding to that product in this circular economy type way? The other one, as other people have alluded to, we certainly talked about economies of scale, the food waste, the different types of waste, and how to pull those together across the vast distances we have within our own region here, and also how to move that product. So the logistics, the geographical things, but also this then raises another area where we spoke about is the regulatory areas. So regulations, there's quite a large number of regulations sitting out there that people don't understand that we have to meet in this particular area. So people say, oh, I want to use some solids to put onto a crop. Why can't we do it? Well, there's a whole host of regulations sitting there, and we've had substantial outbreaks of salmonella in Australia, which has ended up in deaths where people have used biosolids. It's got into our food system and killed people. So we've got a whole raft of regulations, both at federal government, state government, and local government level. So how you move these waste products and everything, it's a big area, and it's something that people often overlook and think, oh yeah, we can just do this, but they disregard that, and they need to take that on board. So the other thing is provenance. Now, consumers are also, we discussed this, consumers are being more aware now, and they're not accepting plastics, they're not accepting a whole range of things. Queensland in the future will be removing single-use plastics from out of the system. The government's already starting to look at that. I saw an announcement there that's happening on that. While consumers do buy on price, they're now asking a lot more questions on sustainability and also environmental impacts. So we then went through on self-sufficiency out of these, and in these circular economies, can they be self-sufficient if they start doing it? What's the economics of it? What's the benefits of it? How are they going to do that? And how's that going to be profitable? And the economics of it, how's it going to support smaller rural communities that engage into this? Is it going to be economical for them, or is it going to be a significant burden or a cost to that community as it moves into that area? Then we had talked about collaboration between groups, and once again, you've got co-op models. It's probably the only way that we're going to achieve these things, but we've had a lot of cooperatives that have started and a lot of cooperatives that have failed. There's some that have moved on to some success, others that haven't done. And so once again, we need to look at how these things are set up and how people are prepared to support these now and then into the future, and also then the potential of, as we move with technology, how do you upgrade something if you put in a biodigester that's certainly there? How are you going to upgrade that, or how are you going to deal with that particular unit once it becomes dysfunctional and you have to remove it? So there's all these sort of issues that people haven't really looked at or discussed at the present time. So sugarcane, we discussed about that. as well, but there's a lot of nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals as well, over 46 different products that can come out of there that we haven't even looked at. But is it of economic benefit to do it? That's the whole thing. There's some may be starting to become economical benefit, others the benefits are not there. So this is something that we sort of discussed in our group. So yeah, others are very welcome to put in some more intel there into that from our group.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bob. A very vocal group, clearly had a lot to share. That was awesome. Any further feedback from Bob's group, or a thumbs up if he's covered everything? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I can see there's a few comments in the chat too, so keep those comments coming. That's awesome. So last but not least is Michael's group. So over to you, Michael.
Hey, yeah, I'm really impressed by the amount of experience from people from this region. Like, this is really quite exciting to think that as a region, and I know there's really cool stuff happening in Mackay around sugarcane or Emerald around composting from private enterprise. It just seems like there's a lot of momentum here, which is great, which is why Food and Fibre Plus is happening. And like, going back to a few points that a few of you have made, is cooperatives and networks are critical. So that scaling up thing where, you know, you've got a problem or you've got a potential opportunity to create value, who's keen, you put an EOI out to who, having an established network of businesses that trust each other, that are there to partner for commercial benefit and are interested in community outcomes as well, is critical. So I see that happening on the Sunshine Coast a fair bit in the circular economy space. Jackie knows that well. And there's so much potential for it in this region. But just reiterating what everyone said, you're definitely like on the mark. I think, again, like agri-tourism, we know what's going on. We just need to adequately resource the solution. So I guess we went from, we had a wealth of experience from Indigenous food, and like, they've been doing circular economies for 60,000 years. So let's not kid ourselves. Like, it can be as simple as, yeah, like really simple small scale solutions. I guess we did talk about piggeries, because intensive animals are so heavily regulated. They've been forced down a path to turn that problem into a solution and reduce the costs of their business and regulatory burdens. So if you look to the heavily regulated intensive animal industries, often you can find really good solutions and technologies there. So we talked, like, and Matt and Paul and others had really awesome practical examples, and it's about how do we scale up regionally. The question was, is going too big, too fast, just too hard? And, you know, it does require a lot of investment in infrastructure and supply chains, like, yeah, the CQ Inland Port and nodes that people are investing in now. How do we tack on manufacturing precincts and like spatial clusters of businesses where, you know, scale and efficiency becomes a real driver for identifying places to do this? Because not everyone wants to run a farm or live next to a big composting facility or a biogas generator. So the planning stuff comes in again. But this is where state development's really critical in identifying industrial land to do this, whatever process they wish to do that through, and there's established ones there, and there's stuff happening in Mackay. Yeah, so our group really bounced around from really small scale to large, with lots of practical examples, and I think that's what brings a lot of richness to the discussion, is the more practical examples we're all aware of and people doing a really good job. Well, it's how do we add to that without introducing too much, like, because there's commercial in confidence issues and competition, because once we turn waste from a problem into a valuable opportunity, into business competition, into regional competition becomes a thing. And I guess, how do we sort of just cut through that? And cooperatives are a legal model to do that, and other ways. And yeah, it's really fascinating. But that's just generally talking about what everyone has talked about thus far in our group. I think the people in this group have the knowledge. I think it's just about, where's the broker, where's the facilitator, where's the person who can glue it all together? Where's the network that glues it all together to make those commercial realities, you know, basically come to reality? So government is most interested, obviously, in regional jobs. You'll hear that and have heard that for many years, and you'll hear it for another 4 years. Circular economies create value, and in doing so, create value for people across the supply chain, because there's work there. More work, more jobs along the supply chain than there otherwise was from a traditional sense, where we're, you know, exporting, you know, energy and water, whereas we could be circulating that at a regional scale and actually retaining workers in the region, because they've got, you know, when we create value out of it, I guess there's actually a reasonable career opportunity there. Composting might not be the first thing people think of when they leave uni, but we should make it exciting. And it is exciting. And there's, you know, there's plenty of examples where people are doing it at a small scale in Brisbane, collecting people's coffee waste and whatever. And there's a really good example outside Emerald where it's a massive scale and it's really cool. So yeah, that's sort of just summarizing our group and what you guys were talking about, but pretty excited.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's just open it up to the rest of Michael's group to see if we've got some more comments to build upon what Michael has said so far.
Jack, oops. Got to talk on the one. Sorry. Yes, Alicia. Look, just one of the great points was just adding to what Michael summarised. That we talked about, you know, thinking outside the box. You know, as far as the parties involved in circular economy. You know, a lot of our discussion today is on producers, but I think Suzanne Thompson in our group, I think she's put it in chat too, has brought up a great thing about the Indigenous side. There is that other dimension of the you know, the cross-pollination. We can't dismiss too in this conversation of circular economy, the opportunity for our industrialists, our fabricators, general industry in town as well. And if you talk about native foods, bush foods, then your retail side too. So I think, you know, small steps came up again. You know, yes, it's complex if you look at scale, but there are simple, small, sometimes social enterprise activities you can get involved to that can increase the general awareness and choices and understanding of your general communities, especially in the bush.
Fantastic. And well, also thank you all for sharing such positive energy as well around this topic. And I think, Michael, you certainly articulated it well, that you can see, you know, collaboration in action when we're all working like this. Even today, you know, we're sharing, we're building, we're capturing, we're documenting. And if you've got any extra thoughts, please keep on documenting on the chat, because that's a way of, you know, we're so much greater when we can work as a collective brain and with that sort of growth mindset, which clearly everyone on our virtual call is doing that today. So thank you for calling that out, Michael. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So we are at the end of this session, and just like the last one, I have got a pre-populated poll for me to share, and obviously it didn't have all of the ideas, so I'm just going to pull it up, and because we pre-populated it before we heard all these great ideas. So one of the things at the end of this poll, and I'm just going to launch it, is the other ideas. So it's just a small range of ideas to get us thinking, and you can vote for all of them, one of them, none of them. If you vote for none of them, at least go other ideas and put some things into the chat. So here are which collaborative opportunities across Central Queensland for circularity appeals the most, and you can vote for more than one. And definitely, if you've got other ideas, build those into the chat and just write poll what the idea is, so that collectively we'll be able to gather that. I can see some things going into the chat already, so that's great.
I was just going to say before, Jackie, we talked about Matt and I guess Suzanne to a degree talks about there's a spectrum of like social enterprise, cultural enterprise that might not necessarily have like I guess a lot of us are talking about commercial outcomes in business, and like that's cool, but I think, yeah, there's like a real spectrum of solutions to, and yeah, Matt was talking about some really great ones locally that make money for anyone. Maybe government has a role in doing a bit of funding there to see that through for not-for-profits and social enterprises. But yeah.
Great, I'm going to end the poll and share with you all. So last chance, if you haven't voted, put something in and certainly add to the chat as well. And we can see from, I'll share the results and the collection of data to understand where our opportunities for waste and for byproducts is coming up as, you know, one of the most compelling things to do collaboratively across all the regions. And I can certainly say that is something that is a global trend. You know, we're starting to see that everywhere, because, you know, how can you work around it if you haven't got the data to start with? And closely followed by those greater education on what are the business models and all the opportunities that are kind of come off the back of that. But it looks across everything, really high engagement with just that small range of ideas, which is a great springboard for our workshops, which are going to be much more in co-designing in January, where we'll be digging into these in more depth. So that now concludes our second theme. So our next theme is going to be I'm just double checking here. It's going to be in half an hour's time, and it's going to, so we've got a chance to go grab a bite to eat, grab a sandwich, and reconvene at 1 o'clock. And we're going to be looking at sustainable land management and water security. So this was probably the theme that has come across, you know, when we did the polls last time. This sustainable land management and water security has got a huge amount of energy from people across the region. So I think it's going to be a really important theme. So come back after lunch, and we really are appreciating this collective brains trust. It's so much better than working in a bubble on your own, and all the feedback that you're providing is all being captured, and many thanks to Ananya who's capturing that for us today. So in a short space of time we'll be able to share that back, and of course everything's being recorded, which is a great reminder to stop recording for this part. So enjoy your lunch everyone, and see you soon.